And we'll kick off this episode by taking a look at some of the games that are on our upset alert list, starting with Georgetown and Colgate. And who would have thought at this point in the season the battle for first place in the Patriot League would involve the Georgetown Hoyas? But here we are. Head coach Rob Scarlata has done a fantastic job so far this season coaching up his squad and has them entering this ball game 4-4 and 3-0 in the Patriot League. They have a lot of the same elements as Colgate does, which is great defense and excellent special teams. The benefit for Colgate is that one, they are coming off of a bye, and two, they are much more consistent game to game on the offensive side of the ball. So look for quarterback Grant Brenneman and running back James Holland to find a way to get the victory over the Hoyas in what will be a very close game. What a huge matchup in the MEAC this weekend as Morgan State travels to Bragg Stadium to take on the Florida A&M Rattlers. Both teams have knocked off the big dog in the conference at North Carolina A&T, and the reason why this game ends up in our upset alert segment is because Morgan State has one of the ingredients that gives you a chance each and every week, and that's great defensive play. The Bears may have the best set of linebackers in the MEAC in Rico Kennedy, Damari Whitaker, and Ian McBurrow. They are great on both ends of defense. Where the question for Morgan comes into play and where they could get into trouble against FAMU is on the offensive side of the ball. The Bears are essentially playing a one-dimensional game with their ground attack because they struggle passing the football with consistency, and we know FAMU's offense has the ability to do both, and because of that, they'll find a way to avoid the upset. They have their eyes set on the Celebration Bowl and know that they can't afford any slip-ups along the way. Speaking of a huge game in the HBCU ranks, the Jackson State Southern game in the SWAC should be must-see TV as the Tigers make the trip to A.W. Mumford Stadium for the first time since 2015. The Tigers' offense was non-existent against North Alabama last week in their 24-7 loss. What's been the key turnaround for the Southern Jaguars this season has been the play of quarterback Ladarius Skelton and their defense. Skelton's ability to be a threat in the running game, juxtaposed to their defense's ability to get off the field, has really shrank games for Southern and allowed them to close them out. They control their own destiny in the SWAC West and won't allow a desperate JSU squad to spoil their opportunity for a potential rematch with Alcorn State in the SWAC title game. So look for the Jags to get the win.
Well, the FCS creates so many opportunities for young men. And it's, I think, and you look in our league, it's really the best. It's the best combination of winning football, but also outstanding student athletes. That's really the true model here. And a lot of the FCS programs feel the same way. And, we're blessed to be where we're at here at Lehigh, and everybody else in this league feels the same way. But the FCS, you'll see a lot of people that aren't coming necessarily to the NFL, but what they are is they're becoming leaders of industry, whatever they do when they graduate. And that's really the most important piece of going to college and playing college football, is to getting that degree. And our guys really excel in that response.
Let's get back to previewing some of the big games on the schedule this week. In the Ivy League, the Cornell Big Red travel to Princeton and take on the Tigers. And coming off of a win last week against Brown, the Big Red offense showed a great deal of balance against the Bears. And that type of effort will be needed against one of the best defenses in the league. Quarterback Dalton Banks looked good last week throwing the football and will be facing one of the more athletic front sevens in the Ivy. Princeton was able to get back quarterback John Lovett last week against Harvard, and he was back like he never left, doing damage on both ends of offense. And I was more impressed with the defensive effort of Princeton last week, doing a great job of turning the ball over against the Crimson, giving their offense multiple at-bats, so to speak. We're reaching the meat of Ivy League play, and I would expect another closely contested game, but I like Princeton to stave off the upset-minded Big Red in this one. Kennesaw State takes their show on the road this week against the Charleston Southern Bucks in a key Big South battle. Right now, Kennesaw State is ranked second in the FCS and has one of the best defenses, or offenses, in the subdivision. Defensively, they face a foe in Charleston Southern that poses some of the same challenges as their own offense does with their option attack. The Bucks have won 2 straight games and are sitting at 3-3 on the season. An upset win against Kennesaw could go a long way in helping them get on a run the rest of the season to perhaps win the conference. As good as they've played the last few weeks, I just think that Kennesaw State is coming off of a bye and is one of the better defensive teams as well in the FCS. Just makes this whole thing wishful thinking. I like Kennesaw State. In a battle between two of the surprise teams in the FCS, Stetson and Davidson meet up in North Carolina in a Pioneer League tilt. The Hatters are coming off of an excellent win against Jacksonville last week, 38-35, and they've won games this year in a multitude of ways. And we're going to learn a lot about their run defense this week, as the Wildcats are one of the best rushing teams in the PFL, averaging 386 yards a game on the ground, and they're explosive in doing so as well. It's been a fantastic first year for head coach Scott Abel, but he has to begin to work on the defense or he'll find more games ending for his squad like the last 2 weeks have ended. Biggest challenge this week is taking away Stetson's number one option in the passing game in tight end Donald Parham. If they can bracket him while trusting their outside guys in one-on-one coverage, they'll have a chance. And what should be an exciting game, I'm going to go with the better defense of the two, and that's the Stetson Hatters. They say defense in a running game travels well. Well, the Hatters have both and should do just fine against Davidson. Down in the Southland Conference, we have a big one between Incarnate Word and Nichols. The Cardinals are fresh off of an upset win over McNeese last week where they dominated from start to finish. They were able to take advantage of an offensive line of McNeese that has been questionable at best all season long. Defensively, they'll face a different type of challenge in this game against the Colonels, who are coming off of a bye week. Nichols does a great job testing an opponent's ability to get off blocks consistently in a running game. Can the speed and athleticism of UIW match up against the physicality of the offensive line of the Colonels? That'll be the biggest thing to watch in this one. And for the Colonels offensively, quarterback Chase Forcade has to get into a groove early with some of those easy completions to keep this offense ahead of the chains and be able to sustain drives. I like Nichols in this game. I look at the bye week and extra preparation for Incarnate Word's offense will do a defensive-minded head coach like Tim Rebo very well, and they'll get the win. Since we're talking about Incarnate Word, let's stick with them as we take a look at some of their pro prospects to keep an eye on this upcoming weekend. And we'll start in the backfield, obviously, with running back Raekwon Dickens, who's averaging 8 yards a carry on the season and has that breakaway element to his game that you look for. He's also a threat as a receiver coming out of the backfield, which is very valuable in this day and age of the NFL. He also provides good value as a kickoff and punt returner. Along the defensive line, Justin Alexander has the size to catch the scouts' attention at 6'5", 265, and the skills to keep them watching his film. He has excellent versatility playing across the defensive line for the Cardinals and still has good upside left in his game. So far in the season, Alexander has 9 TFLs, 6 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. And in the secondary, keep an eye on Jamarcus Williams. The 6'3", 198-pound defensive back has outstanding athleticism as he also competes on the Cardinals track and field team as a high jumper. Williams has the length to excel on the boundary and the ball skills to make quarterbacks avoid throwing to his side of the field. A battle for first place in the NEC as Bryant travels to Sacred Heart. The Bryant Bulldogs have offense and lots of it. They are never out of a game and will always give them a chance to be successful on game day. It's been their defense that has to give you cause for pause as they're giving up on average nearly 38 points a game. The Sacred Heart Pioneers were able to stop the bleeding last week, ending a 3-game skid by knocking off the red-hot Central Connecticut State Blue Devils in impressive fashion. Now, quarterback Kevin Duke was great last week throwing the ball, going 21-28, 321 yards, and 3 touchdowns. What I like about the Pioneers in this game is their defense. I think they'll get enough stops to slow down Bryant while taking advantage of a defense that has struggled to stop anyone this season. So look for Sacred Heart to move back into first place in the Wild Northeast Conference after this one. Over in the SoCon, the Mercer Bears travel to Spartanburg, South Carolina to take on the SoCon leading Wofford Terriers. What's interesting about this matchup is the Bears have exercised one demon so far this season in knocking off the Sanford Bulldogs. Can they exercise another one in defeating the Terriers? Well, for that to happen, Mercer has to get significantly better against the run, and that's all they'll see in this ball game. If they can steal away a few possessions from Wofford, then they have a great chance of pulling off the upset. Wofford was able to get back on the winning track last week, knocking off East Tennessee State, and they did so with excellent defense, especially on third downs, and not allowing the Bucks to get deep in their territory. Will they be able to cover on the perimeter as the Bears have a very good passing game to complement their spread option attack? I think they can. Look for the Terriers to hold off Mercer in this ball game. Many sleep on Wofford's ability to defend the pass. They have arguably the best secondary in the SoCon. They'll be able to get the W over Mercer. After having the second longest conference winning streak come to an end last week, the Jacksonville State Gamecocks head to Murray State to take on the now first place Racers. Gamecocks head coach John Groff spoke about the turnovers that ultimately doomed JSU in the game against SEMO last week. They'll have to be extra careful with football this week, as the Racers have one of the best pass rushers in the OVC in Kenny Wooten. The problems for Jacksonville State start with not being able to run the football. If they can't control the line of scrimmage, then all else is lost. Murray State has been impressive during their 4-game winning streak, finding good balance along the way. Quarterback Drew Anderson has done a great job in protecting the football and is keeping this offense on pace. Earlier in the season, the defense couldn't get out of its own way. Now they become more of an asset than a liability, turning the ball over and playing opportunistic football. I do like Murray State as a team heading in the right direction, but I believe last week was an anomaly for the Gamecocks, as they'll right the ship against the Racers and retake the lead in the OVC. Huge game in the Southland Conference between Central Arkansas and McNeese State. Quietly, the Bears are one of the more well-balanced teams in the FCS, good on both sides of the ball. Central Arkansas head coach Nathan Brown has done a fantastic job in his first season. The key for the Bears in this game will be along the offensive line. Can they win the battle against the front seven of McNeese? The Cowboys are coming off of a tough loss to Incarnate Word, where they looked outmatched. They've quietly had questions offensively all season long, and it has been the defense that has bailed them out a couple of times this year. Whoever gets to start at quarterback will have to find ways to sustain drives. McNeese has struggled on third downs all season long on offense, and I like Central Arkansas in this ball game, seeing how they operate with tempo and pace and how Incarnate Word gave the Cowboys fits last week with the same approach. I think the Bears continue to roll and spoil homecoming for the Cowboys.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
This weekend, I'll be the color analyst for the South Carolina State Howard University ball game. It's homecoming weekend at Howard, and it should be a good one as they try to keep their Celebration Bowl hopes alive. You can watch this game at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app. A pivotal game in the Missouri Valley Conference as the Jackrabbits and Redbirds meet up. South Dakota State struggled to find offense last week and couldn't get out of its own way with the turnovers in a loss to Northern Iowa. It was an uncharacteristically bad week for Taron Christian, the quarterback. This week, the senior signal caller is going up against one of the better pass defenses in the conference in Illinois State, and the Redbirds are coming off of a loss to conference leader North Dakota State by the score of 20-14. The story was the same for Illinois State as it was for South Dakota State: turnovers. Also, the fact that the Redbirds couldn't get off the field on third downs was a bit concerning as well. You don't want to call a game a must-win game, but I think it's obvious that both teams need a victory. I like Illinois State in this ball game. Although the Jackrabbits have the better quarterback in this matchup, I think overall point of attack play that the Redbirds play with will be the biggest X factor in this ball game. A part of me still feels like UC Davis is fighting for respect. They get another opportunity to prove themselves against a worthy foe as they travel to Missoula, Montana to take on the Grizzlies. The Aggies have the formula for success to defeat any team. They're balanced on offense, they're diversified in their passing game, and they play solid defense. The Grizzlies seems to be on a downward spiral, losers of 2 straight games. Their offense just doesn't look like it has that juice anymore that we saw earlier in the season. They're struggling to find that dynamic element within their offense that we saw, like I said, earlier in the year. On top of that, their defense gets worn down as a result, and they've not been able to stop the run as well. I think we'll see UC Davis go into Missoula and get a victory against Montana, further strengthening their case as the big dog in the Big Sky Conference this season. There are 2 big games in the CAA this weekend, and we'll start in Delaware as the Blue Hens play host to Towson. This game features 2 squads that are very similar. Both have athletic quarterbacks that are efficient in the passing game. Both have outstanding defenses, especially within the back 7, and both have strong special teams units as well. I think when you look at all those things being equal, you go to the X factors. And for Towson, it's quarterback Tom Flacco, who's been tremendous this season for the Tigers, throwing the football and also as their rushing leader. He's added a certain it factor to this team that we haven't seen from them in quite some time. For Delaware, it's their linebacking core. Troy Reeder, Charles Bell, Ray Jones, Kobe Reeder are outstanding players, and they do a great job of playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. These guys are great sideline-to-sideline backers as a defensive unit, and they help aid one of the best defenses in the CAA. It's going to be a great offense versus a great defense battle in this one. I like Towson to win the game. When the best player in the game is a guy that controls the football, you're going to be in good shape at the end. Flacco is that type of player for the Tigers. The other big game in the CAA involves two of the best defenses in the league in Stony Brook and James Madison. Now, the question will be in this one, who trusts their quarterback more to make off-script plays? That is what's going to decide this battle of titans in this matchup. We know that both teams' foundation is built upon the defense side of football and also along the line of scrimmage. They both have a stable of backs on offense, and they can run the football really well. Can Ben DiNucci of James Madison and Joe Carbone of Stony Brook be a little bit more than efficient in the passing game and use it to help set up their rushing attack? On paper, statistically, both quarterbacks have had excellent years, touchdown to interception ratio wise, but both have been suspect situationally, and that's where they're going to have to play above the X's and O's in this ball game. I think James Madison is a little bit more apt to do so than Stony Brook, so I like the Dukes in this ball game to win.
I think the FCS gives a student athlete a chance to really develop in the classroom and on the field. And I don't think there's anything that gets in the way of the development of the student athlete. You know, whereas in sometimes other conferences, other levels of play, I think there's some things that could sway a student athlete in a wrong direction here or there. But I think at the FCS level, I think it's all about the student athlete. I think it's all about his development in the classroom and also on the playing field. And it really it keeps your values and your goals right in front of you. And I think there's less things that are going to take you away from those things.
And now it's time for our Stats FCS Game of the Week preview. And this week we have the 4th-ranked Weber State Wildcats heading to Grand Forks, North Dakota to take on the 22nd-ranked North Dakota Fighting Hawks. And here are some keys to victory for both teams in this ball game, starting with Weber State. It's as simple as it is written here: stop the run. If the Wildcats can't win on first down defensively and put North Dakota in backed up situations to get them out of what they want to do offensively, it could be over very early in this ball game. The second key is pretty simple as well. They can't beat themselves. They were the better team last week as they were able to overcome 3 Jake Constantine interceptions, but a bit of a step up in weight class here, as any lost possessions against a team that can run the ball like North Dakota is a losing proposition. And if I'm Weber State, I tried to make it a track meet. North Dakota wants to play a slow-paced, heavyweight slugfest, but you have to be one of those teams that dictates the terms. I like how Weber State is able to spread the field and force opposing defenses to match up on the perimeter while they get creative running inside. So that's a great way to loosen up this defense, wear them down, and knock them out of the game. Moving over to North Dakota in this contest, and it's easy as dancing with the person you brought to the party, and that's their 3-headed rushing attack. They do a great job of sticking with the script and slowly wearing down a defensive front. North Dakota has to avoid the temptation of trying to get creative or cute in this ball game and stick with the script of running the football. The defensive line of the Fighting Hawks has to be licking their chops going up against an offensive line of Weber State that has some bouts with inconsistency this season. And if you're a defensive end Mason Bennett, you have to find ways to be the disruptive force in this game to frustrate this Wildcats offense. He's going to have to be huge in this game in order for them to win. And whenever North Dakota has an opportunity to put points up on the board, they have to take them. Weber State has a very good offense and does a great job, and they have the ability to score quickly, so you don't want to think twice on whether or not you should go for it or take the points. Always take the points in matchups like this because they'll be to your advantage or to your benefit as the game rolls along. Let's take a look at some of the X factors in this ball game, starting with Weber State, and I think you have to look at the linebackers being the biggest ones. They have a tremendous set of backers here, led by Landon Stice and LeGrand Toya. Those two combined for over 90 tackles, 14 TFLs, 6 sacks, and 3 interceptions. So needless to say, facing this running game of North Dakota, they'll have to play some big-time ball this week in order to get the win. For the Fighting Hawks, I look at quarterback Nate Ketteringham. Now, over the last few games, he's been able to answer the call when they've needed him to make some plays in the passing game. You have to figure that Weber State will put him in some disadvantageous situations early in this ball game, and he'll have to convert if they want to knock off the Wildcats. I like North Dakota in this ball game. Not too many teams want to or are equipped to have a 60-minute physical discussion on a Saturday afternoon. I think we'll see the running game and defensive line of North Dakota be the biggest reasons why they upset the 4th-ranked Weber State Wildcats. So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and be sure to check out and subscribe on iTunes to the Football Game Plan's FCS Opening Drive podcast, where David Hashagen and myself will keep you up to date to what's going on around the FCS.